Everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, Alan. Guys, today we have Alan. He's Alan Armstrong. He has on all his social media channels, The Strong Startup. He's a venture architect, if I'm
Yeah,
not
it's a fancy
mistaken.
word for like a startup coach. Yeah.
That's a heavy word, man. I
Yeah.
just want to tell you, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here. I've been following you for
Thank you.
quite a while on TikTok, ever since you had like maybe 20K followers. I'm not sure, 20K, 30K. He
Yeah.
posts a lot of information, guys. Books you should read, skills you should learn, websites, and cool, interesting facts about startups. He's a startup enthusiast. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you did take a shot at actually making your own startup, and it didn't go so
I
well,
did.
maybe. Yeah, so
I did.
I really want to start with that. Then we're gonna roll
Sure.
into.
Yeah, fantastic. And actually, we were talking off air about my friend. One of my best friends is actually from Lebanon, and it was kind of a connection through him. That's actually how it
Yeah,
all began. So we got some funding for a research-based project. So funded through a university, through an organization called EIT Health in Europe. And yeah, we basically did a year of development building a app for the Microsoft HoloLens. This is an augmented reality headset, super cool, kind of on the edge technology that's
yeah,
still kind of only a testing device at the moment. But we had this vision of trying to show people how to do basic daily tasks at home, and this was specifically for people with memory issues, so people with dementia, for example. And the idea was super exciting. Actually, Mohammed, one of my best friends, he was the guy that came to me, and he had the experience with the tech. I had the background in kind of health, and we kind of got together and we wanted to build that. So it was very interesting for me because I got to do a research position in a university and also learn about entrepreneurship and try to build a business model around it. We did lots of testing, but ultimately, even when I tried to create that company for a few months afterwards, it just failed because of the fact that there was no product market fit. I was trying to create a very heavy tech solution for a customer that just wouldn't be able to use it.
yeah.
Elderly person plus a brand new technology, we dealing with memory issues was never really going to work.
They don't mix well. Yeah.
Unfortunately not, as I learned the hard way.
Yeah. So a question again about this specific startup. Did you do it because you actually loved the idea, or because you thought it was trendy, or it was new technology, or how so?
Yeah, I just wanted to help people. So at the time, my grandfather had dementia. I saw how frustrating it was for my parents to be able to deal with my grandfather, and also the lack of like guidelines or information about how you can help this individual. And I thought that I could really help people like my grandfather by
Yeah.
using this. So really, it was a passion project for mine. The technology was a bonus. And in hindsight, I probably would have going back, I would have dropped the technology and tried to help the dementia patients in a different way, which
Yeah.
would be probably helping the caregiver,
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry about your grandfather, but this is actually a really nice idea, and it's really genuine, because
Yeah.
the priority is helping people, not just making money or just doing something that might be trendy. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great skill to have as an entrepreneur, because that's the vision. That's where the vision lies.
Yeah.
And guys, just a heads up, me and Alan are both startup enthusiasts, so it might get really into details for the people that might get bored. Just skip through. So
They won't get bored. We'll keep it interesting.
they
Don't
won't.
worry.
The ones that will listen will love it, actually. And
Cool.
Alan, I want to get this fact straight. Do most startups fail?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah,
I think it depends how you define a startup, because there's plenty of small, medium enterprises that,
yeah,
maybe try to go the VC route and get investment, but they still survive. I think a lot
yeah,
of people think you have to go that direction. But I do think a large portion of them fail because by their nature, they're super high risk. And if
yeah.
it's super high risk, just like, doing the lottery, not everyone wins the lottery, right? A very
Yeah,
small number of people do.
yeah, very true. I used the definition from the lean startup that a startup is a solution to a problem created during uncertain times, extreme uncertainty. So
Yep.
this is most probably the biggest factor in startup failures, because you're not creating something that already exists, you're creating something new, or using something that exists and just like improving it, enhancing it, or so on. But where do we define whether the mistake is from the entrepreneur himself or fundamentally from the startup? How can someone find the error?
You mean that the entrepreneur makes a bad decision versus the startup idea doesn't make sense?
It could be making bad decisions. It could be the entrepreneur himself not knowing how to translate the idea into an actual product. It could be giving up too early, you know, or going for the wrong ventures, for example.
Yeah. I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but there are some things that, like, you know, a very good idea can die because it doesn't get funding. So if there isn't an interest in sustainability startups, like 5 years ago, you probably couldn't get a sustainability startup funded, right?
Yeah,
but now there's a lot more funding for that. So those opportunities are there. But I think fundamentally, most of the ideas that a startup will have, they begin with this idea and then they iterate just like lean startup. And then what comes out as a product to enter the market is very different from what they had. It's very rare that the Facebook that came out like 10 years ago or whatever is the same as what it is now. I mean, they're also doing an internet provider in places in Africa. They're doing augmented reality. Like, he never would have had that vision. So it's very different than what he imagined originally, I would say. It's probably not the best example, but because of that iteration, I think most startups fail because either they're not willing to pivot, either they're changing their idea to a new customer, or they're going towards a different technology. So they stick with dementia patients, and Alan drops the technology and he tries to think of a different type of solution for the same problem. And most people are not willing to do that. They're just willing to go with their idea, and that's why they fail, I think.
Yeah, and about that, how does, for example, you as an entrepreneur, you have your startup, you're working on it. When do you know, or how do you measure when you should just pivot or like, you know, change not the core idea, just change the way it's going, change the business model, or when you should actually drop the whole idea itself? When you should know, okay, this is enough, I should pivot, try something new, or just drop the whole idea?
Talking about the science of product market fit, basically, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a fantastic article I would refer people to for product market fit. So when you actually launch a product, to make sure this guy, the CEO, checks every single week to see what is the satisfaction. And he has a cutoff point that I think it's around 60% of people would be very disappointed if the product didn't exist anymore. Then that's considered to be product market fit. But I think fundamentally it's more of a qualitative answer than a quantitative. So you just need to talk to your customers. You need to actually listen to what they're saying. Because if the customers are telling you they don't want it, and they talk completely about a different solution or a different problem than what you're addressing, then you need to be able to recognize that and then be able to say, okay, our solution is not for that customer, or our solution doesn't make sense. Let's stick to that customer problem and build a better solution to fit that. I don't really have, like, say, an equation or a number that I can recommend. But
so no matter how much we love the idea, we cannot force it onto customers. Eventually, if they're not gonna like it, that's it. You're not gonna go any further.
Yeah, your idea is pretty much worthless. That's why I think it's really healthy to have humility when you walk in as an entrepreneur, and you don't care about your idea, you care about your customer, because your customer has the problem, and if your solution doesn't fit that problem, then you're never going to sell them anything, or you will sell them once if it's a return customer, and then they'll never buy from you again because your product is terrible. So ultimately, everyone places way too much value on the idea. They think they can get VC money and investment based on an idea. Nobody will pretty much give you money for an idea. They give you money for a validated idea, which is like 100 customer interviews or a newsletter with 10,000 people saying they really want to buy your product, or whatever the case is. But way too many people invest and place so much emphasis on the idea. It's not that important.
Yeah. And speaking about customers, if I gave you two options, let's say, for example, you have these two options that are guaranteed to work for you. So option number one is having the same returning customer every month. Option number two is one new customer every month, with the one before just leaving. So you get one new person and you build off that. Which one would you choose? I
think I would always go for the returning customer. And that's how I approach the strong startup and stuff like that. I'm looking for super fans. If you know Pat Flynn's book, Super Fans, I'm reading it now. That's what I want as a business. I want to have a loyal customer base that love my product. Now, it depends. If it doesn't matter because I sell a one-off product,
it depends.
Like, I don't know.
It depends also on what you sell. Yeah.
If I'm selling a plumbing product that just, like, you know, my sink is blocked, I need to buy this product one time in a year, then maybe it doesn't matter. But, you know, generally with startups, you're looking for, You're looking for the quality of the customer, because that customer will be loyal, and that customer will probably buy more products from me when I diversify in the future. And more importantly, they will be able to give me better feedback, because if I keep getting new customers and then they leave, then they will have no kind of understanding of how the product has developed over time. And so I lose that history, the perspective of the customer over time, you know?
Yeah. And you mentioned product development, and I know product development maybe is where research and development is the most spent on, prototyping, testing the product, and one product fails, and you have to redo it all over again and test it again and again and again. So with that, does every single startup has to go through some sort of funding or investment, or can a startup actually make it to the big leagues without getting any sort of other investment than the one that the founder has?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a bigger fan of the startups that go bootstrapped. That's definitely a possibility. It's not spoken about, although it's coming up more and more now.
Yeah. And Alan, I want to cut you off a second. Can you just define bootstrap startups for the audience?
Yeah, a bootstrap startup is essentially a startup that does not take external funding. So they have no external investor like a VC or an angel investor. They use their own money. Or maybe they do the 3 Fs, the friends, family, and fools. So they get kind of their close network to help them. And they just grow organically. It's like a small business, like a coffee shop that doesn't have a loan from a bank. They sell you coffee, they get money, and then they put that money back into the company to grow.
That's can it grow as a normal, maybe at a slower rate, but can it actually like become a unicorn startup, for example?
Yeah, I think so. I can't actually think of some examples. That's a good idea for a video as well, for me to do some research on bootstrap startups that became. But I mean, the thing is, every startup is bootstrapped in the beginning. Every single one of them. Airbnb, they sold cereal during the presidential election.
No, this is because this is because very, very rarely investors put their money into ideas. Because it would be going to waste. I've seen this on Shark Tank a lot. They don't invest in ideas. They want at least just the MVP or just a small prototype at least.
Yeah, that's traction. You gotta de-risk it. It's the number one thing to do. And people think traction is like Instagram followers and stuff like that. I don't care if you've got 10,000 Instagram followers. How many of them are going to really convert to when you're going to buy and are going to sell a product? Are they going to really buy, or are they just liking your account because you have good free content? And there's a difference between that and between like people putting in a pre-order or a Kickstarter campaign, or people that have maybe bought a guide, right? So a lot of people overlook the opportunity to get revenue much earlier. They think they have to have the app. But the best example is, do you know Freeletics? Have you ever heard of that company?
No, not really.
They're like a health and fitness app company. They have like a nutrition app, and like they guide you for body exercises for working out. They made $1 million before they ever produced any app. €1 million. And they sold a PDF. They sold a PDF on their website, just a guide of exercise. They did that and good marketing, and they made €1 million in revenue before ever releasing a product.
That's crazy.
That's the power.
That's a rare occurrence. I don't think there's a lot of startups who can do that. And about bootstrap startups, what would 3 cons, for example, be for trying to make it all on your own without external funding?
Yeah.
What would be your biggest risks?
Number one, I would say is the likelihood that you could run out of cash is very high. So it depends on your product and on how quickly you can generate revenue. So that's one thing. So the risk of failing because of lack of money is higher with those type of startups. I would say number 2, your growth. I mean, you're limited by how much of a margin you make and how much revenue you can put back into the company. That's the second one. I'm trying to think of a third one now. I mean, sometimes what comes from these VCs and the investors is actually not just the money. Everyone thinks it's the money, but it's actually the network. It's actually the value, and some of them are very
the mentorship as well. Yeah,
the mentorship, but some of them are extremely hands-on, JK. So some of them actually come into your company. They'll look at your finances and they'll do a whole they'll work with you as if they're an extra member of your team. And you're not just getting one individual, you're getting the team of the investors.
This is something you want, right?
Exactly. So sometimes those expertise, because that's like getting an injection of steroids into your company, because you're jumping 10 steps ahead, because you're already gaining the experience of like 50 plus years in finance. If you get this particular investor, for example, I would say they're the 3 things. So because you're learning by doing, then you have to make smaller mistakes, low risk, small mistakes, and you have to grow your business kind of organically. It's always going to be slower than a funded startup.
Which one do you prefer? having it
I
funded?
personally,
Or
I prefer the underdog. I'm an underdog, full
yeah,
stop.
yeah,
I prefer, working hard outdoors,
yeah,
and I don't like gyms. I want to work out outside. I
yeah.
prefer people that are hands in the dirt and do
Even
bootstrap.
even if you got the offer, like you didn't go around chasing investors. Someone just came in and told you, "I want to be a part of it. I'm ready to fund you." Would you accept it?
Yeah. Now I wouldn't, but that's because my current startup, if you want to call it, it's more of a small business, but the strong startup, this is my vision. I'll do this for the rest of my life, full stop.
Yeah,
So it depends on the company that I had, but Basecamp, I would say, is a very good example of a hugely successful software and bootstrap startup. They have a book out as well. They actually have several books, one on remote working, but they also have a list of bootstrap startups on their website because they
yeah,
support that. They refuse money. They refuse a lot of money from VC. They actually they had an offer from Jeff Bezos, and they talked him down. He wanted, like, say,
damn.
I think it was something like 10% of the company, and they were like, no, Jeff, no, we're going to give you less than that.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
has a small non-controllable equity stake in the company, so he
yeah,
has some equity, but he can't make any decisions.
yeah.
And that's the only investment they ever took on, and they're hugely successful. So
That's actually really surprising. I did not
yeah.
know all of this. And one more thing, I think bootstrapped startups work best for services, right? Not for products. Because there's not a lot of room to test a product with not much cash. You cannot
You
spend a
mean like a
lot.
hardware-based or like a physical product, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It
Services
depends.
are easier to test with or easier to scale because you have
I
so
mean,
much free resources online.
if it's software as a service, right? This classic, like anything like Trello or
Yeah,
Asana or
yeah,
any of these popular online platforms or whatever. Yes, it's much easier to grow a software-based business. This is why Y Combinator, I think, pretty much only focus on SaaS companies, software as a service
yeah,
companies.
yeah,
But it depends. It depends what success is for you. And what most people don't ask is, like, what would you be happy with? Would you be happy with being a Bavarian, where I'm based, like, in every single city or town within Bavaria, and have your product in every single store? Or do you want to take over the world? Because if you want to
yeah,
take over the world, probably you need a little bit of help along the way,
yeah.
to really get to that
That's true.
scale.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now, putting the startup aside and speaking about the founder of the startup, the actual entrepreneur, there are skills, there are values, there's character. We cannot much discuss character because this is something you're born with or you can actually work on along the way. But to differentiate between skills and values, because I've heard a lot of times they care about the personality and the attitude and the values of the entrepreneur because all skills can be learned at some point, right? Okay, so Alan, I have one question for you. Let's say you were the entrepreneur. You had only, let's put the character and personality and attitude aside and the values, the vision,
Yep.
all of this. If you only had to choose 3 skills to equip yourself with and build your dream startup, which skills would it be?
You've given me too much choice here. It's too easy. So
Take
this
two,
actually
take
comes
two,
directly.
take two.
Okay,
I'm
the first
discounting
two,
one.
2 is even easier.
Yeah.
But 2 comes from Y Combinator Startup School. Week 1, you can listen to the podcast that they have of that. It's to be able to, first of all, build it. So whatever it is, maybe it's app development, maybe it's web development, whatever the skills will be needed to build
Yeah,
it. Second of all, to sell it, because that's all you have to do is to be successful. You have to build it and you have to be able to sell it to customers. They would be the 2 most important skills, full stop.
Yeah, for every entrepreneur, right? Whatever the startup is. Yeah.
I think you have to specialize, right? So if you're going to become a CEO, you're not going to have time to do sales calls. You're going to want to eventually hire a head of sales, right?
Yeah.
So you probably need some experience with sales, or you need some experience with building so that you can understand and not get cheated. So you know what the rates are for a salesperson, or you know that if you're outsourcing some development, you're not going to get screwed by getting a crazy high price or something,
Yeah. So let's say, for example, I want to build a startup that is very technical, maybe software development, or I'm building something, and I have no clue whatsoever in softwares, in coding, in development, but I'm good at sales. Should I learn the skill, or should I try to understand it so I don't get scammed, for example?
Yeah, I think it's better, and we get a lot of entrepreneurs that want to come to me and they say, hey, look, I have this idea, but I can't build it. I want to do something in blockchain or whatever, right? It's really hard to find a technical co-founder, particularly in a place like Munich where I'm based, because you've got these big companies like Google, SAP, and everything that are going to give you a €70,000 per year job, right? So really hard to find, but I think don't waste your time trying to learn how to build that. I would say stick to the thing you're good at, which is sales, and instead find a really good co-founder. There's a great book called Co-Founding the Right Way. You can buy that book, and it'll teach you how to find a co-founder, because you go further together. And really trying to go alone. I know some entrepreneurs that are technical that are also building the app on their own, and they don't want to take on founders. I think that's also a mistake.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this next, actually, about choosing co-founders or working alone. And I believe that if you really want to grow a startup, it's impossible to stay alone. It's
not impossible. There are exceptions. So,
but it's like you're gonna put all your time and all your effort in it if you want to actually grow a company, for example, not just a startup.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I just mean that there are some people that are like truly exceptional that can do it alone. But even those people eventually have to hire expert people to work with them. So if you think Elon Musk is great, he's got a team of fantastic people around him, full stop, that make it work, right? I think it's always better to have a co-founder, always. It's hard, and people don't want to do it because, again, it goes back to the idea. They love their idea so much they don't want to give it away. But you have to just learn to let go of that idea, bring someone in. And sometimes it's not going to work, but most of the time you'll go much, much further with someone else.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Alan, would you consider investing in startups? Maybe now, maybe in the future.
Yeah, that's something that we're going to do, actually. Yeah. So the vision for the Strong Startup is to create a online community that can go through kind of a pre-incubation and then an incubation program. Pre-incubation is like figure out how to find an idea, how to talk to customers, and how to create a pitch deck. Incubation is like, how do you take that pitch deck, do a market analysis, create a business model, and then maybe go towards creating your first prototype, for example. And then, we want to attach an investment to that in the future.
Yeah. Sure. And what do you base your investment choice on? What are the metrics you look at?
Good point. It goes back to the two skills that I mentioned. So first of all, if I'm looking at the team, I want to, number one, can they build it? So if I get a non-technical founder trying to sell me an app and there's no one that can do it, or the app guy is part-time, maybe working full-time in Google, that's a big red flag for me. So can the team deliver on the product that they show me that I'm excited by? So I have to be excited by it, and then they have to be able to build it. And then number two would be whether or not they can really sell it, but those skills can be brought in a later phase. So number one is like, is the idea a potentially big market? So the number one mistake that I see, or an often mistake that I see, is that startups try to do something too niche that just has like 4 people in Germany that are going to buy it for a small price, and that's never going to create enough money for you to be able to run a business. So the market needs to be big enough. You need to be different enough compared to the different solutions that are available at the moment, and most importantly, you have to be able to build it. And those would be kind of maybe the 3 things I look at. Yeah,
and thank you for mentioning this. And with that, I want to conclude the podcast. But before, I want to give you a minute to just give some advice for entrepreneurs, for people who are looking to become entrepreneurs, maybe just want to work in startups. And as you know, this is a very volatile environment. There's risk, there's uncertainty, there's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff moving around. So just like basically how to get started. That's the question, right? Yeah. So what I recommend is, if you don't have an idea, you don't know what to do, you have 2 choices. You can go ahead and pick a topic or an area and go talk to 100 people in that space to figure out their problems. Don't talk about any solutions, just talk about their day-to-day. What are the biggest challenges that they have in their life, whether it's a doctor, or whether it's a bus driver, whatever, right? That's one way. And a lot of people don't like that because it's a lot of work. Second way is just go join a startup. I mean, we're living in COVID times. You can work remotely, find a local startup if you can, offer to work for free, or offer to do, like, say, a paid position. That's the lowest risk possible. If the startup fails, I mean, you're there just to learn anyway, so the risk is not on you, and you will really get a head start. You'll have far more experience in a de-risk environment, and then you'll probably get even inspiration about what you can do. That's my recommendation. If you don't have an idea, if you do have an idea, just start taking action on it. Number one thing is just to, again, talk to customers. So if you have an idea, go find those customers, talk to 100, no less. And after you do that, you'll have a much, much better picture of what you need to build.
Yeah. And with that, I want to thank you again, Alan, for all the time you gave us. Guys, if you want to check out Alan, I'm going to put all his social media links in the description. You can follow him there, check out his podcast, and even connect with him. I assume he could answer your questions.
Absolutely.
And that was it. Thank you so much, Alan, for the amazing podcast.
Thank you. You're a really great interviewer. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you, man.